Are you a successful IT professional and need help optimizing your compensation plan, navigating your taxes, investments, and protection? It's time to rewire and retire with Mike. Listen in as Mike gets you the answers you need to move forward. Now, on to the show with Mike.
Hello and welcome to Rewire and Retire with Mike Guarino. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm good, Eric. How are you?
I am thrilled to be with you today. It's been too long. I think it's been a few weeks, right?
Yeah. We had that oddball 5-week month, right?
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah, and then lots of stuff happening in your world. I hear somebody's graduated. You were able to attend the graduation, and it was fantastic from what I hear.
Yeah, we were able to actually go outside, which was a treat. So, yeah, my middle son graduated high school, and
Yes.
on into, I think he's going to technical school. He's going to become an auto mechanic, which kind of runs in the family a little bit. So I'm happy about that.
Nice.
And yeah, it was hot, Eric. We were sitting on a football field, AstroTurf,
Ugh.
and we were just baking in like 90-degree heat and humidity out there and just
Ugh.
waiting for it to end. I hate to say that, but like, oh my God, it was hot.
Yeah, well, my son's a mechanic as well, and so it's interesting. Wherever he's working, hopefully it's a nice place with air conditioning, but I doubt it because he'll have to get ready for that heat. Working on a car, and even in a shop can be pretty sweltering, but it's a great living, man. It's a great thing to be doing. So I'm happy for him and wish him the best.
Yeah, he has a tendency to break things, so the fact that he'll be able to put them back together is a bonus in my world. So,
I took things apart as a kid, now I put them back together. So yeah, that's right up my alley too.
Right, it all comes full circle. Yeah.
That's it. And speaking of breaking things and putting things back together, no, I'm kidding. I mean, we're talking about finances. We were talking about the benefits of financial planning, and we're in the middle of a mini series with this, right?
That's right. Yep.
All right. Well, what are we covering today?
I think we're covering 7 and 8.
All right, number 7 and number 8 out of 10. And number 7 from my notes that you sent me, it can help you identify risks you hadn't thought of.
Yeah. So, when we do financial plans, a lot of times what we see is, we do a gap analysis, right? And a gap analysis simply says, here's where I am, here's where I'm trying to get to, and basically the gap in between those 2 points, A and B. And inside of that, you'd be amazed, Eric. There's so much we can address there. And I'll go over a couple basics that I see jump out, because to get into the details, we could spend the next 5 weeks on this. But I'll go over with the listeners and you some of the basics, right? What we see. A lot of folks currently are underinsured. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I do want people to take a hard look at that. So my experience has been, when I do financial planning for clients and we sit down and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you're 50 years old, you want to retire in 15 years, you still have a mortgage, we have some college debt to pay off, you're semi-empty nesters because maybe one of your kids has graduated college and, living off on their own. So, it's a typical snapshot of what we see. And, the gap analysis begins. And this is where we identify those risks that, people don't know that they have. And, what I say to them when I do these analyses is, you still have a mortgage. You still have, I'm making up numbers, 10 years left on your mortgage. You still have some college debt to pay off for your child. And good advisors ask difficult questions. And I hate to do this to people, but I'd feel like I'd be shirking my responsibility if I didn't. And I say to them, what happens if you get hit by the bus, Mr. Smith? Then and then I'm quiet. And then I just look at their reaction. He goes, well, what are you talking about? And I'll say, well, I'm saying, like, if you were not here anymore, how would these things get paid? Oh, well, I have life insurance at work. Okay, well, have you looked at it? Like, how much is the group term policy providing as a death benefit for you and your family? So a lot of times they'll say, oh, I don't know. I know I just opted in for the group term life. So a lot of times what I'll do is say, okay, get me that in writing. Show me what you're buying, through your payroll deduction as the group term policy. And Eric, I'm telling you, probably 9 times out of 10, they come back and they're underinsured. And then I say to them, I go, look, you're 50 years old. You want to retire in 15 years. You got this college debt. You got the mortgage still. And if you're not here anymore, and that death benefit from work pays something, where does the rest of the money come from to pay off the mortgage, the college debt, and to set your loved ones, your wife and your children up so that, there's no financial burdens put on them as a result of, an unforeseen catastrophe like you passing? Then you see the wheels start turning. You see them thinking like, well, what do you suggest? And the amounts, you'd be surprised, they're not real big. The term policies are usually, with the indemnity insurance at work, they're getting, 2 times their salary. And it's okay. But what we like to do is always supplement that to address that gap, right? To say like, well, the plan says to really be fully insured. Again, making up numbers, you have, 500,000 at work. Great. But to cover the mortgage, the college, and to kind of set your loved ones up so, there's no financial burdens when you pass, let's get another 250. And then we start shopping for, cheap term insurance or whatever makes sense. But, usually at that point in their life, I try to get them term because it's inexpensive and they realize, again, it's just there to fill this gap. And people come back to me, a month or two after we do this and say, Mike, I'm really happy you did that because I always kind of wondered in the back of my head if I had enough. And I was just checking the boxes like everybody else at work with the group term policies. And I never really thought of it. Thank you for, shedding light on that. And I always say, like, it wasn't me. It was the financial plan that shed the light on it. And I appreciate you collaborating on it because this is the stuff I want to bring to you. This is how I demonstrate value. This is how we're making sure that we're holistically looking at your situation and making sure that we're preventing any unforeseen issues in your finances. Now, some of them we can control, some of them we can't. But I'm telling you, you'd be surprised 9 times out of 10, people are underinsured from my experience. And just getting a little bit of supplemental coverage can make people feel much more confident about their finances.
Yeah, and as you said, you're not looking to make this huge sale for a policy that's going to cost them a ton of money. Bottom line is if you're talking term, it's much cheaper, like you said, or inexpensive. And you can't put a price on being able to sleep well at night. I'm sorry. When my wife and I were going through this, the minute I signed that same day, I thought, man, this is great. And I was young. I was very young when I signed it. And I just knew that everything was going to be covered. Everything was going to be covered for my wife not to have to work. She's a worker. She won't not work. But for the first part, at least, to be able to transition to being single and help the kids through everything or whatever, I didn't want her to have to work. I didn't want her to be forced to do something right off the bat.
Right.
And so, man, that just, it felt amazing to me, and it was more than I ever thought it would be because the feeling was more than I thought it would be just because I never really realized how much I was underinsured at that moment.
Yeah, there's an old saying in the industry, like, if you had a machine, an ATM in your house that you could go to once a year, every year, once a year, it would spit out exactly your salary that year. How much would you insure that machine for? And people look at you confused, like, what are you talking about? Saying, like, look, if you had an ATM in your house and once a year you could go up to it and put your code in and, take out, I don't know, whatever your salary is, 100,000, 200, whatever it is, right? You could pull that out once a year. How much would you insure that machine for? And they're like, well, I don't know, if I'm making $100,000 a year and I'm going to work for another 10 years, I'd insure it for at least $1 million. I'm like, exactly. And then I say to them, guess who the ATM is?
Yeah.
And they always get it. They're like, it's me.
Yeah.
They're the ATM machine. And I'm like, yes. Once you kind of take the human element out of it and just make it very binary, very black and white, people see the light. A lot of times the emotions get in the way and they get attached and they're worried, right? They're concerned like, oh my God, this plan is going to make me look like a, financial incompetent. And I'm like, no, the financial plan is to show you that we can give you clarity and confidence in your finances and that we're addressing these things. So yeah, you're perfectly right. And the other thing too, Eric, what I see a lot, and I prepare my younger clients for this, is, hey, I know you might jump around jobs a lot because that's just the trend in the tech industry, right? There's a lot of job hopping, a lot of movement in that industry. And I'm always encouraging them to get a term policy while they're young that will follow them around. So regardless if they jump job to job to job, and then they have to, with the new company, sign up for all their benefits again and jump into the group term life policies again at work, all those things, as you get older, get more expensive, right? You hit these ranges of age, and then your group term policies will go up in price. I said, well, wouldn't it be nice if we insure you at, 30 or 35 years old? That premium will never go up if we have the right term policy in place. You'll have it for, whatever term we set on it, 25, 30 years, 35 years, whatever you want, and not have to worry about changing jobs affecting how much that policy is going to cost you, because your costs always remain the same.
Yeah.
Plus, when you work with younger clients, you're locking in their age, which is huge from a life insurance perspective. And you're also locking in their health, which they always neglect. And I look at these people and I go, look, you're probably in the best health of your life, whether you know it or not. And they're like, yeah, I've never had any serious illness. Thank God. I've never had this. I've never had that. And I'll say to them, yeah, that's great. So this is why we want to think about life insurance right now, because I know how that's going to work out 10, 20, 30 years down the road for you. And it's extremely inexpensive, like you pointed out. In a lot of cases, it can be very, very inexpensive. In my experience, term life insurance has been the cheapest way to go.
Yeah.
Just because it's the cheapest way to go doesn't always mean it's the right way to go. But, it's a way to have the conversation about making sure that people have enough coverage. God forbid something happens. And, like you said, people really appreciate it, and it gives them clarity and confidence on their finance. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. I love the ATM analogy, because my wife's been pushing my buttons for years, and
Sorry to hear that.
I just keep producing money. So does she. We both work, but yeah, she likes to push my buttons. Anyway. What's the next one we're going to go? What's number 8, brother?
Well, I just want to finish a little bit on number, before you get yourself in trouble, Eric. Let's finish up on number 7. This is going to sound super basic, but maybe your wife would appreciate this. When we meet with people, financial planning, we start talking about, investments, assets, accounts they have, with me or other places. And the one thing that we always do through the planning process is a beneficiary review. Again, we're talking about gap analysis and what boxes have to be checked, right? You said you're here at point A, you want to get to point B, you want to know how it looks and what you need to, build a bridge to get from A to B. Again, we talked about life insurance being a major factor, but beneficiaries, right? On your accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks with beneficiaries. Maybe you have a joint account with a spouse, is a TOD, a transfer on death, in place on that account. And these bring up conversations, and people, I just did a plan for a guy, works at a major corporation. Really interesting. Younger guy, and we're doing a plan, just had a baby, buying a new house. He's like in that zone of life, and he's taking it seriously because he's meeting with me and we're doing a plan, which is always a signal like, okay, this person's taking their finances seriously. Well, wouldn't you know it, he sends me a statement from his 401k at work, and I'm plugging in all the assets and everything, and then I just throw the question out, who's the beneficiary on this? Now, remember, he just got married. So, I would assume he'd want his wife to be. And I looked and I saw the name and I'm like, who's that? He goes, oh, that's my mom. So he said, I said, let me guess, you've been working at this company for a while before you met, your fiance who became your spouse, who's now your wife, right? And he's like, yeah. I go, well, so you might want to change that. Maybe he wants his mom to be the beneficiary of his IRA or 401k, or, maybe he wants his spouse to be. And very important to address that. Very, very important.
Yeah, that's definitely something you want to cover, because, again, that could cause all sorts of issues, especially if the spouse finds out and then, wait a second, why? That definitely, that could be problematic.
Yeah. And even on like joint accounts, right? With the transfer on death, like if you don't have a will in place and you have just an account, like a TD bank account or something, not IRA, not 401k, just a regular old account, maybe, play stocks on the side, you and your friends get together and you have a little investment account and it's only in your name. That's important. Like when a person gets married and we do planning, like I identify these old accounts and he's like, well, she doesn't get involved with that. Like I just trade the stocks in there. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But, do you understand what a transfer on death will do to that account? And they're like, no, what? And I say, okay, if you pass and that money, is in that account and your will isn't up to date saying that account has to go to your spouse, Well, it could create a nightmare in probate for them. And also,
Mm-hmm.
who knows? Like those, if things aren't spelled out, those assets might not go where you initially intended. So simply a transfer on death is just a form that you both sign on the account that says, if he passes before me, it just slides over to me. And if I pass before him, it slides over to him. And that's like
Mm-hmm.
easy peasy. I don't want to call it estate planning, but it's estate planning in a nutshell. That and the beneficiary review,
Yeah, it's the
extremely
basics.
important. And I'd
Yeah.
say that's often overlooked when we do these kind of things. So those are just a couple. Like I said, Eric, we could spend the next 5 or 10 sessions just going over, what a gap analysis will reveal. And I'm only picking out like the meat and
Mm-hmm.
potatoes of what I see is the biggest bang for your buck. So all the listeners, to the podcast should I encourage you strongly, look at the beneficiaries on your accounts, IRAs, 401ks, and look into getting transfer on deaths put onto your, retirement asset accounts if it's possible.
All right, Mike, number 8 on our list is it may make you more confident with your money. Planning can make you more confident with your money. How so?
You said it earlier, right? When we were talking about the life insurance aspect through the gap analysis and making sure that you have enough coverage. Well, that's going to, who's not going to walk away with more confidence in their finances when they know that that's been addressed and covered? We talked about beneficiaries 30 seconds ago. That's a huge one, right? Like just make sure those are in place. Transfer on deaths are in place. So the confidence that my clients come back with is amazing because, Eric, a lot of people, when they do financial planning, they don't realize how good they are. They're just, they're doing things and, nobody's really shed the light on them, whether or not they're on track or what. And when they sit down with me, more often than not, thankfully, people are ahead of the curve. In other words, they're doing the right things. It's just the subtle tweaks that an advisor or a third party looking at their finances, can bring up. Again, making sure that the estate is protected, life insurance, beneficiaries, all that stuff. But also looking at, other aspects of their financial lives. And like, for example, people turn 50 years old and don't realize that they have a catch-up contribution they can put into their 401k.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that mean? It means you can now put in more money into your 401k every year. Are you aware of that? No. Okay. Well, let's go do that. Or when you turn 50, I'll set it up on my calendar on your birthday because I always give my clients birthday calls, right? And when they turn 50, guess what the message says? Hey, Aaron.
Catch up, baby. Catch up.
This is your catch-up birthday call. And they're like, huh? I'm going to be like, yeah, this is the birthday call I give you when you turn 50. So you now have the ability to turn on, put in a higher percentage of your salary into your 401k. This is known as the catch-up contribution. I give them all the numbers. And if they want my help and support with that, I give it to them. You'd be surprised in how much that helps a person get ahead when they start chunking away that additional deferral, how that looks, over the next basically 15 years. If you take a person at 50, turning on their catch-up contribution and pushing it out for 15 years, it creates quite a good sum on their nest egg. And that's another thing that will give somebody confidence. Like, oh my gosh, thank God you told me that, because I've gone from, X to Y now in my financial plan. I'm another leg up because I will have deferred more. I will have, hopefully produced more savings as a result of that. And so that's extremely important. It's something I see that is an easy adjustment when it comes to, just looking at confidence and giving people confidence in their plan, just to address the things that we take for granted as advisors, but clients may not necessarily know.
All right, Mike, you've covered a ton today already, but how else does planning really boost the confidence of your clients?
Oh, sure. So, what I find when we do planning is, people are standoffish. They're a little like, I don't know where this is going to go, how it's going to turn out. But once you start really working with a client on their finances, it gets intimate, it gets deep. And the relationship between you and the clients gets very deep because now there's this trust, there's this hurdle, this obstacle that's kind of out of the way, and they're starting to trust you more. And along with the trusting of the advisor comes, the confidence in their finances and the confidence in their plan. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, if I take my finances seriously and I have faith and trust in the person that's doing my financial plan, And this person's coming to me with all these tips, and all this good advice and all these subtle tweaks, really is all a lot of it is. There's a confidence that starts to exude in that client, and the relationship between the client and the advisor gets really, really deep. And so our financial planning clients wind up sharing a lot more over time. Like, okay, Mike, well, Ed and I were thinking about getting a beach house. Can we afford it? Okay, now we have a goal, right? Now we have another goal that we're going to be planning for. So things come to light over time while you do planning. It's a living, breathing document, right? Financial plans. The way we use our financial planning software, it's online. You can log in, you can see it 24/7. It's always drawing in or sucking in, the latest values of your accounts. So it's updated 24/7. It's state-of-the-art stuff. And the clients have access to this, and they'll log in and they'll look at it because I can tell, because I get notifications that they're looking at it. And that's the best feeling in the world when we get done with the plan, to know that the clients are going in maybe once a month just to check and see things. And it really, really gives clarity to the whole picture, and the level of the relationship gets really deep. And that's what I think every advisor wants, is a deep relationship with their clients where they have their clients' best interest in mind, and they're really looking out to make sure that no mistakes are made, and that we're running real efficiencies from what we've discovered in the plan.
Yeah, I would say that anytime that you can build that strong relationship with any person that is going to be advising you, it's like having a great relationship with a doctor, right? When I first met my doctor, it was kind of, you said, standoffish. We're about to get personal, right? It's a physical. But I got.
Did you ask him to sing to you?
And no, I avoided that. I avoided eye contact the whole 9 yards. But his name is Dr. Gums, and he's not my dentist, for crying out loud. He's just, anyway. He's a fantastic guy, right? And we have that relationship where now I can bring him any of my questions, concerns, and he can make good suggestions to me, like losing weight and things that I don't want to hear from anybody
Right.
else. But I trust him to tell me the things that I really truly need to do. And I think that that's the same type of relationship. Those people that come to you and say, hey, we want to buy this beach house, and this is how we want to do it. Can we afford it? And they're going to be able to trust you to tell them the truth, not what they want to hear. You know what? I love this. This is a great plan. My concern is A, B, and C. Can you wait a year to put this plan into action? Because then you'll be on much more stable footing with your finances. They're going to be able to listen to that and accept that, instead of, oh man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. We've got that relationship now. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that that's what everybody's looking for is a relationship of trust.
And again, it's a collaborative process, right? It's not, it's not an autocracy, right? I tell them you have to do this. It's a relationship, and it's compromise, and it's give and take. But once that relationship is tight and melded, it's great, the calls you get from clients. They're like, hey, we just had our grandbaby. What do you think if we open up this type of account or that type of account? It's awesome. And that's all we ask for. And Eric, that's a big reason why I went and got my accredited investment fiduciary designation, because I've always put the clients first. I always have. And I think that's a big key to our success here at Guarino Wealth Management, is just always looking through it as the client's perspective, and then saying, okay, what would I do for me? What would I do for my mother, my sisters? What's the right thing to do for this client? The AIF designation just puts it out there like, hey, look, we got your best intentions in mind. We want to do the right thing for you. And, when we have the planning and the relationship goes deep, I kind of remind them that I have that designation just as a little tug to say, this is me doing what I know is the right thing for you and your situation. And clients appreciate that so much, when all the BS is just taken out of the picture, and it's just you, as a good person to them, as a good person, saying, hey, we're taking care of this and you got this. And I want to kind of peel back a little bit on something you just said earlier, right? Maybe the beach house has to get delayed. That's a great point. You know what I find myself saying a lot to clients? It's either you can retire earlier than you want to, and the surprised look on their faces is amazing. Sometimes I'll say to them, hey, if you worked another 2 years, you could really put this whole plan on steroids. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then I demonstrate to them how. Because a lot of times, Eric, people will try to retire early and forget that, Mike, I want to retire at 60. And then I go, well, who's going to cover your benefits? if you and your wife both retire at 60, you have 5 years to go before Medicare. I didn't think about that. I'm like, right, but that's what I'm here for, right? So I'm trying to save you money. So if you don't hate your job and you can make it another, 5 years, let's say in that example, it really, really is rewarding to the plan. And that's where the focus goes. Once we start planning, the focus is on the plan and the client.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great. We have just covered part 4 of the 5-part mini-series. If you are just tuning in and this is the first one you've listened to, go back and listen to the first 3 for sure. But also if you're just tuning in, you'll learn very quickly that no podcast is complete without Mike taking a look at his crystal ball. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. I need you to take a good long look and tell me what you see.
I see summer. I see skies of blue, clouds of white. I see a nice relaxing summer and then total chaos in the fourth quarter. It's an election year, Adam. It's an election year. Enjoy your time on the beach. Don't plug into, I'm saying it, it's going to be hairy.
Oh, jeez. Okay, then we're changing the sound. Here we go. You ready? This is now the sound since that came up.
Enjoy the summer.
Fourth quarter's coming. Oh, man. And you had to rub it in. Enjoy the beach.
It's too bad we
Thank
can't
you.
play the Jaws music right now, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're looking in that crystal ball, you started getting into a song that might be copyrighted.
But I mentioned it. So
and the Jaws music, we're going to have to, we can't quite do the Jaws music.
Stay out of the water. No.
That's right, exactly.
And again, I'm an apolitical guy. And I look at both sides, like who would be better in the White House or this or that. And, I'm not going to go there. I never do. But what I will say is it's just going to be, it's going to be, the 2016 election all over again. It's just going to be a lot of rotten tomato throwing on both sides. So, again, I think everybody's expecting it. But from a financial perspective, looking in the crystal ball, earnings are coming out stronger than we expected. The economy seems to be recovering. We have a watchful eye on all the data points. So, this can change as the data changes. But I think we kind of had a V recovery for some part of it. And now we're kind of heading more towards a U recovery where it might take a little bit longer. And, the specter of the election being on the horizon is not insignificant to how we're handling our planning and our investment strategies right now. So I know, we're joking about the crystal ball and enjoy the summer. I do mean that. I think it's going to be hairy in the fourth quarter. Make sure your investments are lined up well. Make sure your risk tolerance is where it's supposed to be, because all that stuff I believe will matter as we head towards the end of 2020.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And you're the smart one of the two. So yes,
I don't know about that.
Let's look over the fourth quarter. Mike, thanks again, man. This is a great podcast.
Oh, thank you, Eric. I appreciate your help.
Yeah, you bet. And I want to thank you, the listening audience, for tuning in and listening to the Rewire and Retire podcast with Mike Guarino. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Mike comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Guarino Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Rewire and Retire podcast. If you want to learn more about how we can help troubleshoot your financial and retirement strategies, click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Guarino Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA/SIPC.